Hi folks, this is Jason Moore with MTGOacademy.com. We're going into a daily event with a deck that we're very familiar with. This is a new variant of the Bird Keepers deck, aka White Weenie. We basically cut it to be far more aggressive even than it was before. We've taken some of Chris Davis's innovations that he brought about earlier this year with a lower mana curve, less lands, and more one-drops. And we basically mixed that into our previous build of the deck. We've got 18 basic planes. We're not going to be playing Secluded Steppe because our mana in the early turns is very critical to the deck's success, and the steps will slow us down even though we are playing a number of one-drops. There's really no reason to make the deck less consistent and more prone to mulligans. War Falcon is the most aggressive one-drop play we can have. It's a 2/1 flyer for 1, and all of our creatures, aside from the Squadron Hawks, are soldiers or knights, so it's always going to be turned on as long as there's another creature on the board. The Icatian Javelineers are a staple of this archetype, and they still give fits to a few decks in the format. Some of those decks are not as popular these days, but compared to the other one-drop options, the Javelineer is still very good. And then we got 4 Doomed Traveler, which is really popularized by Chris Davis as a 4-of, and it's very good. It's a very good one-drop creature. It provides card advantage and creates an additional threat even after he's gotten into combat. The 4 Bone Splitter is a real backbreaker against some opponents because it's going to make our clock very much a real factor in a lot of these games. And one of the great things about this version of the deck is that it goldfishes a turn 5 kill very consistently. So you get into these games where the game is ultimately decided within the first 4 or 5 turns just based on your board presence, how many evasive threats you have, and you can present far too many threats for the opponent to be able to deal with in a reasonable amount of time. 4 Journey to Nowhere, because our curve is very low, we can't really afford to play Unmake. And the Journey to Nowheres in the early game are going to be good enough. They're very much going to do the job we need them to do, which is essentially to remove a problematic blocker and force through for a little bit more damage. Now later in the game, its effectiveness is going to decline due to bounce effects like Capsize and ways to destroy enchantments. We've got 4 Core Skyfisher, absolutely an all-star in this deck. Great stats, a great ability, and with a low land count, this is really going to help us out. We've also got 4 Leonin Skyhunter, another strong turn 2 play. He will eventually get stalled out by things like Spire Golem, but once you put on a Bone Splitter, he's going to be very good at punching through. And a lot of times just goes unblocked, which is great. And then 4 Loyal Cathar, the other ideal turn 2 play, I would say, and another card advantage built into a creature, which is something this deck really shines at. Squadron Hawk, the only non-soldier or non-knight in the deck because it draws you a lot of cards, and when they're equipped with Bone Splitter, they trade with a lot of creatures in the format, so it's very helpful. And then 4 Veteran Armorer. This is unique to my build of the deck, and with things like Electrickery running around in the format, I feel like Armorer is almost a necessity. He's very good at helping us fight through other board states, other creature setups, and then it makes us more resilient to removal. So this guy is going to be a must deal with in some situations and in some games. So I like having him here. He's also a soldier, which turns on the War Falcon as well. And then lastly, we have 2 copies of Prismatic Strands, which is a multi-use, multi-purpose card here. It can sometimes save us from dying against a Grape Shot or a lethal Rolling Thunder. It can also be used as a combat trick so that we can destroy the other creatures, keep our guys alive. It helps us race because we can Alpha Strike and then use this as a fog effect. It has a lot of incredible uses. Can also just protect a couple creatures, which is not irrelevant by any stretch. So this main deck is very simple and very oriented towards presenting a lot of threats really quickly. And I think the sideboard is equally simple, and I think that's important to maintain the integrity of this aggressive plan. So let's check out the sideboard here. 2 copies of Aven Riftwatcher, and this will come in pretty much in any matchup where Core Skyfisher is tough to deal with. Aven Riftwatcher will be equally tough to deal with. So good against the mono blue fairies deck, good in the mirror, and good against decks that are going to try to race us, like Goblins, Mono Green Stompy. I think this card can come in there as well, netting us about 4 life as well as a blocker or an attacker. Benevolent Unicorn is a way to stop Hornet Sting and Grape Shot. So it's going to come in against the green decks and against the combo decks, the Storm combo decks. We actually have a lot of answers to Storm, and for good reason. It's a very popular deck in this format. 3 copies of Divine Offering. Now this deck doesn't run enough lands to play Core Sanctifiers, so that really leaves a few other options. You have Dust to Dust, Divine Offering, Disenchant, and Revoke Existence. And I like Divine Offering because there aren't a number of enchantments we really care about, and so hitting an artifact is going to be the primary use for a disenchant effect anyway, so we might as well get some value out of gaining 6 or 7 life against a Razor Golem, a Spire Golem, or a Mirror Enforcer to really help us race, which is what the deck wants to do in a lot of situations. And then a 3rd Prismatic Strands, also for Storm and for aggressive decks such as Mono Green Stompy, which has a really hard time beating this, and Goblins as well. So this is, again, a multi-purpose card that can come in against a lot of things. Mono black decks with Corrupt, Tendrils of Corruption even, and can be a fog against Infect if we want to bring it in there. Speaking of Infect, we've got 3 Standard Bearer, which is going to come in against the green decks, as well as the newer Hexproof Aura decks that have been showing up. And lastly, we have 4 Suture Priests to combat Empty the Warrens, also a strong card in the mirror match, and other aggressive creature decks. This will help us turn the tide and swing life totals pretty effectively. So I hope you enjoy this deck. Please give me any feedback that you want on adjusting the deck or adjusting any of my gameplay. And we're going to take this into a daily event, and please stay tuned for those games. I hope you enjoy.